Now here to share his reflections and memories of Joe is Alan Broadbent.
Well, thank you, Bob. I met Joe 2 decades ago at a meeting of the Social Venture Network in Santa Clara, California, at an old monastery that had been converted to a conference center. And some of you might know SVN. It's a wonderful organization of progressives with a decidedly new age feel about it. And Joe and I, as it turned out, were less new age than old school. We met the night of the first dinner, a buffet at a table near the edge of the room, where we retreated with our trays of steamed tofu, braised eggplant, and seeds. Joe, having lived in California, looked a bit resigned, and I, according to him, just looked puzzled. And I had met TPI founder Peter Karoff at an SVN meeting less than a year before at a location we still all refer to as somewhere in New Jersey. And after marveling at the serendipity of meeting Peter's colleague like that, the conversation turned to the post-dinner program, which included, as I recall, rhythmic drumming and sharing. And I wondered if there might be hugging as well. And Joe said there probably would be. So, being old school, we decided to go to the beer store instead, a local supermarket where we found a beer section that was 40 feet long. And Joe had said that he came from 9 generations of German brewers, so I let him pick out beer from the various California microbreweries. Then we went back to the monastery and set up a beer tasting on my balcony, all in the name of science, you understand, and we began to become good friends. I joined the TPI board shortly after that and began a rich association with Joe and our colleagues. And my relationship with Joe, as it developed over the years, had a number of recurring themes. We always ate well, for we loved good food together. We'd always study a menu carefully, and we'd both gravitate to the most unusual or unexpected things and end up sharing tastes back and forth. And then we'd have a go at the wine list, where Joe would parse the viticulture and find the hidden gem on the list. Almost never the big name or the popular grape, but always a delight. And then after dinner, we'd do an urban walk, normally with Joe striding down the middle of the street, because he always was convinced that our old cities were meant to be experienced from the middle of the street, not by skulking along the sidewalk next to a building. We both loved cities, and we always exchanged articles and references on ways of looking at them and thinking about them. And when Joe came to Toronto, he loved meeting with the late Jane Jacobs and having a chance to talk to her. So Joe was always a lot of fun to be with and was always both interesting and interested. But Joe was basically a serious man, and there were 2 things that mattered the most to him. One of them was what we always called the work. He had worked in and between the private and public sectors, and in a sense it was all of a piece. It dealt with providing the hard and soft infrastructure for effective communities which were just and resilient and which left nobody out. The work meant finding ways of matching ideas and resources with needs and building the community brick by brick, school by school, street by street, and policy by policy. It meant rolling up your sleeves, and we can all picture Joe with his Filene's basement sleeves rolled up and his Filene basement suspenders hitched up and getting down to work. It meant, in the case of him and his colleagues, red-eye flights back from a meeting half a continent away, maybe a long-shot meeting in the faint hope that a lamp could be lit in a community foundation or a family, a sentinel positioned, or a path cleared to a new social contract that could help people and their communities become better. Joe had a favorite bit of advice, which I'm sure most of you have heard, coming from his long and deep affection for baseball, the old line from Oriole pitching coach Ray Miller: work fast, throw strikes, change speeds. And that's what Joe did. He didn't dawdle. He threw strikes because he wanted to get to and stay at the heart of the matter and not cave into shallow sentiment or false bias. And he changed speeds because he knew how important variety was in holding people's attention to good causes and actions. I'd always bounce things off Joe when we were trying at our organizations up in Toronto something new. And I did it because I knew he loved to think about the work and that he would have something helpful to say. And the last time I did it was a couple of days before he died, and he helped me think through an issue I'd been grappling with, so he stayed with the work right to the end, as Bob has said. The other thing that mattered to him more than anything else was Marcia and Alex and Max. Alex and Max were constant wonders to him, and he'd always catch me up on what they were doing, reciting the latest news with clear pride and admiration. But Marcia was his touchstone, the place he would go to reference the truth. And it was almost like an iconic presence when he would say, well, as Marcia Breitniker would say, and I never knew, Marcia, if you actually said all those wise things that or it was just a version of Joe's shyness, but I've been crediting you with a lot of wisdom over the years. And I know that the restorative moments for Joe came when he was at home, and I always relished his reports of weekend meals, what Marcia or Alex had found at the market and cooked, what cheeses or wines Max and Cabell had found, and what they talked about, because they always talked. I said to Joe recently that he would live on in the work I do, and that all of his colleagues and friends and associates do. He influenced the way we think about the work. He taught us how to be serious about it, and he'll live on whenever any of us are there, trying to serve others and make a better world. I love Joe as a friend and a brother. I admired him as a colleague in the work, and his truth is marching on.